So thank you. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you joining us. This is our panel session on You Have to Find Them First, Meeting the Legal Needs of People in Remote Locations. One of the strong themes that's been coming out in many of your conversations and work this week is that access to justice, while it involves infrastructure and availability of services, that it's more than that, that it's also about relationships, trust, continuity, and whether or not people feel safe enough to access services at all. So whether it's across Nunavut, rural Ontario, or Quebec, the initiatives that you're going to hear from today, they challenge the assumptions that justice systems can simply wait for people to arrive, and instead, their work asks what it actually means to actively meet people where they are, whether that be geographically, socially, culturally, or emotionally. Another theme that emerged in our preparation discussions was the tension between mobility and permanence. But before I get into more of that, I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. I'm Jasmine Redfern. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm a lawyer from Iqaluit, but currently based here in Ottawa and Gatineau.
Bonjour, moi c'est Valentine Fau, je travaille à l'Institut québécois de réforme du droit et de la justice du Québec.
Bonjour, moi c'est Émilie Brien, je suis coordonnatrice de projet chez Juristes.
Good morning, my name is Siksik and I am a community justice specialist in Rankin and Nunavut.
Good morning, I'm Giulia Reinhardt. I'm the executive director and a lawyer with Halton Community Legal Services.
I need Giulia to help me out with this stuff. I'm Currie. I am with the Canadian Forum on Civil Justice.
Stephanie Clendenning. I'm a lawyer and the executive director of the Legal Clinic of Guelph in Wellington County.
Excellent. So with that, the structure of our panel today, we will start with some facilitated presentations with background on each of your respective projects and panelists today. We'll move into a bit of a moderated discussion amongst the panelists, and then we'll use the rest of our time for any questions that you amongst the audience might have. With that, our first presentation is going to be from the Rural Law Van. And I think you guys have the clicker. Great.
Perfect. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the origins and how the Law Van works, and then we'll move into talking about some of the evaluation and lessons we've learned. So the Law Van originally ran as a 6-month outreach project in 2019 with Law Foundation funding. It only ran in Guelph, Wellington County, and it visited 12 of the rural communities in Wellington. They were outdoor locations. The van parked near high foot traffic locations like grocery stores and libraries, and we used a legal health checkup approach. It connected people to legal resources and proper referrals for the issues that they identified. And there were issues that were requiring more in-depth support. They were connected by Skype to a legal clinic worker back at the Guelph office. In 2021, due to the collaborations between Guelph and Halton, we began the Law Van 2.0, which was a 3-year project to expand into Halton region and work as well in the various counties in Wellington. So we did 1 day a week in North Halton, so that's Acton and Georgetown, and then 4 days in Wellington counties. So from our perspective, from the south of Halton, we were able to reach people more simply, doing outreach through on-site mobile clinics in public spaces, but the rural communities were trickier. And historically, the Halton Legal Clinic had been located in the north, but we moved south in 2016 due to the population growth of Oakville and Burlington. So the Law Van in 2021 really gave us the opportunity to refocus on rural access to justice with intentionality. Changes to the Law Van 2.0 is that it was staffed by a rural community worker and an on-site lawyer or paralegal with the van, and it ran summer as well as winter. So in winter, we moved into community locations like libraries, community hubs, churches, places that would have us. We focused on co-location with other service providers. We did outreach, who were doing outreach at the same time, so housing help providers, intimate partner violence services, harm reduction, health service providers. And the van operated in a walk-up, walk-in format. We had inviting signage. You can see behind me, that's a picture of the van in one of the locations. People could come and grab Clio brochures, which were really warm and inviting, and that's really what brought people in to say, you know, here, I've come with this problem, right? Even simply having things like fun pens with our contact information was something somebody would come up and grab and then potentially come back maybe the following week to sort of, you know, having broken down that barrier. People can come to us with any problem, and we try to find a resource to solve it. It might be something we do, like a housing matter. It could be an income problem, an employment problem. They might be coming and needing a referral to another service agency. It might be one that we're co-located with. Might be some information. They require some legal coaching and language for how to get connected to another service provider. So for example, we see a lot of family law. So giving people the language to use when they call legal aid was really important so that they got through the process of applying for a certificate. The other things that happened were other service providers would come by and see us. Other service providers would bring their clients, or other service providers would send their clients to come see us on the days that we were out at the locations. People found out about the van most often through social media and word of mouth. We also publicized our schedule to various community newsletters. We got media coverage. And we connect with partner organizations like social service groups and faith organizations to publicize our schedule and our services. So just some of the quick things we've learned is that to do rural outreach, you need to build the trust and you need that consistency of showing up to build it. So in the north, we come in north of Halton, every single Friday we alternate. Winter, summer, rain, shine, snow, blizzard. Sometimes there's, you know, bus cancellation, we have to sort of work with that, but it's that consistency that really helps build the lure of the van. We also learned that people will call us and ask us for the schedule of the van, and rather than we can say, why don't you just do an intake with us over the phone, they'll say, no, don't worry, I'll just go to the van. That's where I'd like to connect. So that trust is really important. There's a very human aspect to the van. There's a stigma of legal professionals, we all know this. People are also hesitant to be a burden. They want to avoid the anxiety of accessing a service they don't know, and the van is a very low barrier way to access us. The other thing we learned is that you need to provide good legal services at the van. That's why when we did the van 2.0, we do it with a lawyer and a paralegal on site, so people are getting service, advice when they show up. The other thing that was really important was being low barrier. It's approachable, it's an unqualified offer of help, and there's no requirements for us to access. I'm going to turn it over to Ab.
Okay. I'm going to highlight two things that I think were most important, stand out most in my mind about the van. Whether they're most important or not is another question. And introduce some data, for some quantitative data. In the first year of the van operated, 85% of people coming to the van said that they had not had any previous contact with the clinic. In the fourth year that the van operated, 65% of people coming to the van said they had no previous contact with either of the clinics. I thought that was remarkable. I mean, that after 4 years, there were still 65% of the people saying that, you know, they had not had any previous contact with either of the clinics. That's gone down somewhat. Giulia and Stephanie can give you their judgments of how much it's gone down. But, I mean, this addresses or speaks to two things. There was, this might be the rural effect. I mean, there was no service in these rural areas, and we started the van, and obviously you're going to get people then, you're going to get a smaller number of people saying that they had no contact, not with the van, but with the clinics, okay? So, I mean, that obviously was happening. The other thing that might have been happening is that we know from the literature that people do not seek authoritative help for the problems. Everybody tries to do something, but they wander around trying to do all kinds of different things, and they don't seek authoritative help. And clearly, we were solving that problem too. More and more people were going to the clinics. getting authoritative help for the legal problems they were experiencing. Good outcome. The second, I want to tell you a little bit about, I want to base it on the qualitative data we collected, because I think that's really important. The van did a really good job of holistic intake and providing holistic intake and service. And that's important, because if we have a commitment to people-centered justice, that means understanding how people experience the problem themselves. And service providers can't know more than the people who are experiencing the problem. And so holistic, what am I trying to think of? I lost it. Holistic intake and services, I mean, the foundation of it. I thought it was important in this project to collect qualitative data. In particular, we learned a lot from unsolicited comments that people made when they came to the van. We would ask people a series of questions in the context of intake. You know, where did you come from? Why did you come to the van? Where did you hear from us? And let me tell you one story that comes from the case notes. There were two people came to the van, two women, a mother and daughter. They each had 3 or 4 problems. Took quite a long time for the person at the van to, give some advice on one problem and a referral and so on. When they finished, one of the women turned around and said, "We've been here for such a short time. Do you have any idea how much you've helped us?" I mean, and which told me 2 things. Methodologically, I had to collect a lot of qualitative, unsolicited comments because we learned a huge amount from it. If you're doing projects like this, I highly recommend it. But it also spoke to the importance of having that kind of intake and contact with people who you're providing service with. Did I get that in 5 minutes?
You did it.
Hey.
Thanks, Ab. All right, I'm going to continue and just kind of wrap us up on the law van. So we've heard a little bit from Giulia and Ab about how the law van essentially operated as a vehicle, no pun intended, for delivering legal services. But I want to talk a little bit about how it also operated as a compass. And by a compass, I mean how the law van was also designed to provide guided legal navigation support. Which you might just think is a fancier way of saying, so you gave them some referrals. But in fact, it's a lot more than that. So what we found is when you provide legal services in rural communities, you quickly learn that one of the single greatest barriers to accessing justice isn't just a lack of courts. It isn't difficulty in accessing legal aid certificates. It's not knowing where to start. In rural communities, we found that isolation isn't just geographic, it really is informational. A client will seldom come up to the van and say, I have a neatly labeled family law problem or an administrative appeal issue. It's not that simple. In real life, it is messy. They walk up and there is a chaotic bundle of just life stressors just waiting for us to unpack them. We might have a landlord who's threatening to evict them, unpaid wages from their employer, perhaps a broken down relationship. And with all of that, the one thing that's always sort of a reoccurring theme is just this underlying and overwhelming sense of paralysis. And so our job, we really see our job on the van as one where we need to expertly unpack all of that chaos and transform it into a clear, actionable roadmap to justice for them. And that's what we mean when we say guided legal navigation in action. And sometimes, we hear misconceptions that, if a client approaches for help and the issue falls within an area of law that we don't practice, and so we do need to provide a referral, that interaction may have been a failure, or at best maybe a waste of resources. And that if they weren't helped directly, how did we actually increase their access to justice? And we believe that in a people-centered justice model, a referral delivered in the form of a guided legal navigation is never a rejection. It's really just a critical upstream intervention. When resources are scarce and scattered across massive geographic regions like we have in the county and Halton region, or in other rural communities, sure, I think if you hand somebody a 1-800 number or just a pamphlet, it probably is a dead end. They're going to fall off that map. We know that. But the way that we do it on the law van with this sort of guided legal navigation support process, it's all of the stuff that we do beforehand that adds the value. We're really trying to connect the dots. We unpack the stories. We probe for the unmet legal needs. We provide targeted warm referrals, while clearly laying out the exact next steps that they're going to need to take in order to achieve those goals. And while we're doing that, we're also taking into account personal barriers and finding creative solutions to help them work around those. And when that right handoff happens, particularly to the specific resources, maybe local resources that we might be familiar with, that's when we really see the magic happen. And we're able to also use our position as community legal clinic lawyers to leverage those relationships and some of those backdoor approaches that we know. So it's not just, hey, I'll give you an example. A client will come and say, hey, I have a criminal law issue and I have a hearing coming up. What do I do? I mean, the easy answer is call legal aid and see if you qualify for a certificate. But we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of unpack a little bit, well, what is the nature of the charge? What is the income level to try and assess would a referral to Legal Aid Ontario even make sense? Or maybe there's something different that's going on here. And perhaps this is a client who doesn't meet the income threshold for legal aid, but they don't have enough money for a lawyer. Okay, they fall in that sort of in-between gap. But this is a client who has, particularly complex needs, perhaps, let's say, a traumatic brain injury. This isn't someone who, we can just give them maybe a general referral and they're going to be able to execute that. So we might contact, for example, in Guelph Wellington, we have senior criminal counsel through Legal Aid Ontario who offers, a pathway directly through us to pick up those people who fall through the cracks. So we might we'll call him John, we'll give John a call and say, hey, John, I've got somebody here on site, needs a criminal lawyer, doesn't qualify for legal aid, can you pick him up? Sure, pass the phone to John. The consultation for the criminal law is happening right there on the spot. We're seeing, meaningful results live on the ground. So another question that we get often is, well, why do you need a lawyer or a paralegal to be the one doing this? We get comments such as, it seems like a lot of training or resources to have, someone out there doing this type of work. And, as people in this room probably can understand, a lot of that comes down to the issue spotting piece. So clients rarely know the name of their problem or what they're looking for. We get clients who just come by and say hello. They don't even come in to talk to us with a legal problem. They just, it's a small town. They come by to see if I'm going to be at bingo later tonight. And it's in those conversations that, I said, well, no, but, what's new with you, John? Sorry for all the Johns in the room today, but, and they'll say, not much, things have been tough lately, I've had this, fight with my ex and, the kids. And then, we start to have those conversations and all of a sudden we realize, oh, actually, it seems like there might be a legal issue going on here. John, do you want to sit down and chat a little bit more about it? And that's how that trust and those relationships are built in those communities. It's not the traditional model of, hey, I've identified a legal issue, I'm calling a lawyer or a legal clinic and accessing the help. It's really sort of a nuanced approach in how you get there. And we really find that, the training of a lawyer or a paralegal to really unpack that helps us figure out, is there maybe an underlying elder abuse situation or an undisclosed human rights violation or perhaps an impending eviction. And we're trying to get ahead, of course, of those issues. We're done? Okay. Well, I am going to wrap up and we'll leave it for questions then. Thank you.
Apology. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll have an opportunity to touch on that more or your presentation more, but I love this idea. I want to pick up on the concept of the holistic intake. I love the idea of recontextualizing referrals as instead of denials, but as a positive intervention upstream and a positive outcome of the work that you're doing. I also love that idea of relationship building and these natural disclosures of things that people might not even necessarily realize are legal issues. And that idea that people don't, along with that, people don't know specifically how to isolate their legal issues. Instead, it's a cluster of these lived experiences. And I'm excited to debrief that in a minute. But with that, I'd like to turn the clicker over to Megan to talk about the community justice program in Nunavut.
Good morning. My name is Megan Siksik, and I'm going to stick to my script because I could ramble on if I get too passionate. I work in Community Justice, Department of Justice, Government of Nunavut. Today I'll be sharing a Nunavut-based perspective on access to justice, focused on what it looks like for people navigating the system in the north, where geography, culture, and system design shape every part of that experience. What access to justice means. Before we begin to define what access to justice means in the context of Nunavut, it's not just about having a system in place, it's about whether people can actually understand it, reach it, and use it effectively within their realities. And those realities can look very different from what we typically think across Canada. Geography is the first barrier. Geography is often the first and most significant barrier to access justice in Nunavut. There are 25 communities in a vast territory with no road connections between them. Travel relies most entirely on air transportation. This means access to justice is highly dependent on flight availability and weather, which can frequently delay or cancel travel. The court system operates in a circuit model where judges and lawyers fly into communities on scheduled flights rather than being based there. So access isn't always immediate or consistent, and delays directly impact people's lives. In this context, access to justice isn't just about services existing, it's about whether they can physically reach the community where they're needed. Sorry, that was my last slide. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Limited justice infrastructure. Beyond geography, Nunavut faces significant limitations in justice infrastructure. There are very few resident lawyers outside of Iqaluit. There are no permanent court presence. In many communities, RCMP and community justice outreach workers, CJOWs, are the only consistent on-the-ground justice presence. Most services operate on a fly-in and fly-out basis, which limits continuity and timely access. This is why community-based roles become crucial in bridging those gaps. Language and communication. Language is another barrier. While Inuktitut is widely spoken, most justice processes and documentation operate in English or French. Interpretation is available but not always consistently, especially in smaller, more remote communities. And even with interpretation, legal terminology can still be difficult to understand. This affects a person's ability to fully understand their rights, participate in the process, and make informed decisions. Complex social realities in our communities. To understand access to justice in Nunavut, we also have to understand a broader context people are navigating. Many individuals are facing housing instability, family conflict, substance use, and mental health challenges, often all at once. These experiences are frequently rooted in trauma, including intergenerational impacts. Nunavut also continues to have some of the highest suicide rates in Canada, highlighting the need for accessible and culturally appropriate supports. People are often connected to multiple systems at the same time: justice, mental health, and social services, which can make navigation overwhelming. These are not separate issues, they show up together in most cases. System challenges in justice service delivery. Justice service delivery is almost impacted by broader system challenges. Weather, geography continue to affect court access and consistency. There's frequent staff turnover, which impacts continuity and follow-up. Limited legal resources can create gaps in representation and case management, and delays in court process are common. Because of this, CJAWs become the most consistent point of contact, helping maintain communication and support clients through these disruptions. So how do people navigate this? Despite all these barriers, people are still expected to navigate the justice system. In Nunavut, that often happens through community-based supports. Community justice outreach workers, who we are. CJAWs are present in all 25 communities across Nunavut, which means there's a consistent community-based justice support. We are local to the communities we serve, community members supporting our own communities. That connection is important because it builds trust and understanding in ways that outside systems sometimes can't. What we do, CJAWs work collaboratively across multiple systems, including justice, mental health, social and family services. This allows us to respond more holistically to the needs of individuals and families. Our roles including facilitating the restorative justice programs, working closely with RCMP, Corrections, and Public Prosecution Services Canada. We also support access to civil court processes, such as family violence orders, emergency protection orders, and peace bonds, and help connect victims to available supports like victim services. CJAWs also deliver community wellness and crime prevention programming, focusing on strengthening communities and addressing issues before they escalate. In addition, CJAWs conduct regular outreach to keep local providers and community members informed about the services and supports accessible to community members. Why it works? This is where community justice outreach workers play a crucial role. In many communities, CJAWs are often the first and most consistent point of contact in navigating the justice system. They help people understand the process, connect with services, and move through the systems that can otherwise feel overwhelming or inaccessible. They're not just supports, they are a key part of how access to justice actually happens on the ground in Nunavut. While supporting clients through processes such as emergency protection orders, CJAWs often assist with gathering information, identifying related needs, for example, helping a client obtain RCMP file number for housing applications or linking them to services when other issues arise, such as property damage. If during an interaction there are disclosures involving child safety concerns, CJAWs have a duty to report to child and family services. This is done while ensuring the client is supported, calm, and understands the process, including reassurance about what the reporting means. CJAWs support both applicant and respondent through referrals and community supports, ensuring referrals are made to the appropriate services such as housing or mental health, counseling services, and homelessness outreach. Ultimately, CJAWs provide flexible wraparound support that bridges gaps between systems. They are often an under-recognized frontline service that communities rely on heavily. And many clients continue to maintain contact because of the trust built through that support. They also assist with practical needs such as translation, interpretation, and even reading important correspondence for Inuit when needed. So what makes Nunavut unique? Nunavut shares some similarities with rural jurisdictions in terms of community-based justice approaches, but there are key differences that shape service delivery in Nunavut. Justice in Nunavut is strongly guided by Inuit Qaimaliaq principles and Inuit societal values, which influence how processes are approached, particularly around healing, decision-making, and community responsibility. Geography and weather also play a major role, often limiting physical access to court legal services and consistent service deliveries across communities. Unlike most jurisdictions, Nunavut has very limited permanent justice infrastructure in many communities, meaning services are often delivered remotely or through visiting systems like court circuits, which creates gaps in continuity. Because of this, community-based roles like CJAWs become essential to maintain access and continuity of justice services. In smaller communities, relationships and confidentiality also play a much more direct role in how services are delivered and received. Key takeaways: access to justice in Canada is not experienced equally, and Nunavut highlights the limits of systems not designed for remote realities. Effective justice in Nunavut requires flexibility and adaptation to local contexts. Community-based roles like CJAWs are not just supports, they're an essential infrastructure. And culturally grounded, language-accessible approaches are critical to achieve meaningful outcomes. Access to justice in Nunavut is about people, community, and connections. Thank you. Strengthening justice in rural parts of Canada / Nunavut means strengthening the people and relationships that hold the system together.
Megan, you did such a fantastic job. It's very difficult, I think, for most people to understand just how different the Nunavut context is than the rest of Canada. And it really is a challenge as Nunavummiut to try to then explain that to people outside the territory when this is all we know and we're not familiar with your systems. But I think you did a fantastic job really explaining that access to justice in Nunavut is so much more complex. The idea that people even have to understand what services are available to them in order to even be able to look for them. This idea that the Nunavut justice system really heavily relies on local practitioners and these community-based roles or paraprofessionals in order to adapt to the local and cultural context, and the trade-off that creates in terms of service delivery, as well as the challenges of the complex social realities within the territory, and a reminder that those complex contexts, they don't just, it's not a one-sided issue. It's not just an issue of the clients that we serve. It's an issue that affects all of us. And that creates this high need for trauma-informed services, and that idea that around what accessibility truly means. I appreciate that you also reaffirmed that idea of non-legal referrals, such as to housing, as part of people-centered access to justice. So thank you. A reminder, our final presentation will be in French, so if you need translation support, now would be the time to get it or to put it on.
Should I give them a minute?
Up to you. Okay.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Ma collègue et moi allons vous parler du projet Juristes mobile. En fait, on va vous parler du projet, ensuite de sa phase de planification, ensuite des services déployés et enfin de sa phase d'expérimentation. Avant de vous parler du projet lui-même, un mot sur nos organisations respectives. Moi, je travaille pour Justice. Justice est présent partout au Québec depuis 2010. On offre des services de soutien juridique gratuits à toute personne qui en fait la demande sans aucun critère d'admissibilité.
Et moi, je travaille pour l'Institut québécois de réforme du droit et de la justice, qui est un organisme qui a été créé en 2018, un organisme à but non lucratif qui vise à inspirer et contribuer à l'évolution et à la réforme du droit et à la justice. On travaille via 2 axes, la recherche, particulièrement la recherche interdisciplinaire, et la consultation. Et donc, on mobilise ces 2 axes au travers de projets qui portent sur différentes thématiques, en lien de près ou de loin avec le droit et la justice. Et donc, dans le cadre du projet Juristes mobile, qui est un projet de recherche-action, on s'occupe... Ah oui, c'est mieux. On endosse le rôle de la recherche, tandis que Émilie et l'équipe d'Infojustice portent le chapeau. Chapeau, c'est peut-être pas le meilleur ustensile pour imager l'action, mais portent plutôt les baskets de l'action, je dirais.
Alors, c'est important pour nous de dire que le projet est réalisé grâce à la collaboration financière du Fonds d'études notariales de la Chambre des notaires. Le projet Juristes mobile est né du constat qu'en étant dans nos centres à offrir nos services, il y avait une large partie de la population qu'on n'était pas en mesure de desservir parce qu'ils ne se rendaient pas à nous. Alors, on a voulu déployer les services à l'extérieur des murs, aller dans les communautés et travailler en partenariat avec les ressources du milieu. Mais on s'est posé la question à savoir comment faire et quelles étaient les bonnes pratiques pour pouvoir le faire. On a donc mis en place ce projet de recherche-action qui a une durée de 3 ans, qui est divisé en 3 phases. La phase d'analyse, de planification, dont Valentine va vous parler un peu plus tard, la phase d'expérimentation ainsi que la phase de déploiement. Dans la première phase, la phase d'analyse qui aura duré 1 an, on a fait des recherches pour bien comprendre les populations qui étaient confrontées aux enjeux d'accès à la justice, pour bien comprendre quels étaient leurs besoins. Ensuite, dans la phase d'expérimentation dans laquelle on se trouve en ce moment, on est sur le terrain, on offre des services aux populations, mais on documente et on fait remplir beaucoup de documentation pour pouvoir les analyser grâce aux chercheurs. L'idée, ultimement, à la fin du 15 mois d'expérimentation, c'est d'arriver avec une formule ou en tout cas des pratiques, des bonnes pratiques qui sont réplicables et qu'on peut déployer dans d'autres centres du Québec.
Alors, Émilie vous l'a dit, l'objectif du projet, c'est de développer des services pour les personnes qui sont actuellement mal desservies par les services existants. Donc, c'est un bel objectif, c'est noble, c'est ambitieux, mais comment est-ce qu'on va trouver ces personnes-là dans la mesure où la seule chose qu'on sait d'elles, c'est qu'on n'arrive pas à les rejoindre actuellement? Donc, notre point de départ a été de mieux comprendre quelles sont les personnes qui, à la fois, ont des besoins juridiques, rencontrent des obstacles d'accès au droit et à la justice et passent sous le radar des services existants. Je m'excuse, j'ai oublié d'avancer. Donc, dans un premier temps, notre démarche a consisté à mieux comprendre les difficultés d'accès au droit et à la justice. Et pour y arriver, on s'est appuyé sur la littérature qui porte sur les obstacles d'accès au droit et à la justice et qui nous a permis d'identifier 17 catégories d'obstacles. Ça n'a pas été si évident parce que, oui, la littérature sur les obstacles d'accès au droit et à la justice est extrêmement dense, mais elle n'envisage pas les obstacles toujours avec les mêmes concepts, avec le même vocabulaire, avec la même compréhension ou avec les mêmes définitions. Donc, on a fait vraiment un travail d'unification et ces recherches-là aussi, elles traitent généralement des obstacles dans des problématiques particulières vis-à-vis des populations particulières. Donc, nous, ce qu'on a pu faire, c'est d'offrir un portrait unifié et systématique des obstacles qui, je pense, pourraient être porteurs pour d'autres recherches. En parallèle, dans cette même revue de littérature, on a aussi identifié 16 facteurs sociodémographiques qui sont généralement associés à ces obstacles. Comme je le disais, les obstacles qui sont souvent traités dans des recherches ciblées, qui portent sur une problématique en particulier touchant une population spécifique. Par exemple, l'âge, le statut socio-économique ou encore l'appartenance à certaines minorités. Donc l'idée, le constat, ça a été vraiment de dire que les obstacles ne touchent pas tout le monde de la même façon et certains profils sont plus susceptibles de rencontrer des obstacles, voire d'en cumuler plusieurs. Donc les facteurs sociodémographiques ainsi identifiés, ils orientent la distribution et l'intensité des obstacles d'accès au droit et à la justice. Ils influencent ou ils déterminent la probabilité d'être confronté à ces différents obstacles. À partir de là, on est passé à une troisième étape qui a visé à situer ces réalités dans l'espace. On a utilisé des indicateurs sociodémographiques pour cartographier la présence des populations associées à ces différents facteurs qu'on avait identifiés au préalable sur le territoire québécois. Et ensuite, on a croisé cette cartographie avec l'offre de services existants. Ça nous a permis d'identifier des situations où les besoins sont présents, où les populations rencontrent des obstacles d'accès au droit et à la justice, mais où les services sont insuffisants, voire même inexistants. Donc un exemple ici avec cette cartographie qui présente la répartition de la densité de population par kilomètre carré dans une région particulière du Québec qui est la Montérégie, où on voit dans les espaces les plus clairs, les plus faibles densités de population qui sont associées à des obstacles tels que l'isolement social, les difficultés d'accès aux services, les difficultés d'accessibilité aux lieux. Et on a croisé ça avec la cartographie des ressources juridiques existantes et on s'aperçoit donc que dans les régions les plus faiblement peuplées, c'est des régions où il n'existe pas de services juridiques et donc il y a probablement un besoin. C'est important de souligner quand même qu'une faible présence de personnes qui sont associées à ces différents facteurs ne signifie pas une absence de besoin. Parfois, c'est le contraire qu'on a pu constater, c'est-à-dire que, étant donné que la population qui présente ces facteurs est faiblement représentée dans des régions, il n'y a aucun service qui est là pour les desservir et donc ça nous démontre le besoin d'y aller également. Finalement, ces analyses, elles ont été complétées par des consultations terrain, des consultations auprès des différents infojustices dans le territoire du Québec, auprès de la communauté juridique en général et auprès des organismes même non juridiques, afin de confronter les constats théoriques qu'on avait faits avec l'expérience concrète des acteurs. Donc, dans cette slide-là, on résume, c'est un schéma qui permet de résumer la logique d'ensemble de notre démarche. Donc, on part des obstacles. Je m'excuse, j'utilise beaucoup mes mains, mais je me rends compte que vous avez le schéma dans l'autre sens. Fait que je vous laisse le soin d'inverser mes gestes pour pouvoir vous tabler sur la slide. Donc, on part des obstacles qui représentent des barrières concrètes rencontrées par les justiciables. Ces obstacles sont influencés par des facteurs, par la présence de facteurs sociodémographiques qui vont jouer sur leur distribution, leur intensité et leur cumul. Et ces facteurs vont se retrouver de manière plus marquée pour certaines populations, ce qui augmente la probabilité de ces populations de rencontrer des difficultés d'accès au droit et à la justice. Donc, à l'aide d'indicateurs, on peut ensuite repérer ces populations dans l'espace et comprendre où ces réalités se concentrent sur le territoire. Finalement, en croisant ces informations avec l'offre de services juridiques existants, on peut identifier des zones ou des groupes qui sont actuellement mal desservis. Et c'est précisément là que s'inscrit notre objectif, développer des approches de proximité qui soient adaptées en ciblant des populations qui sont à la fois dans le besoin et insuffisamment rejointes. Donc, je laisse Émilie vous présenter ces différentes approches.
Alors, on a sélectionné 6 différentes approches dans 6 différentes régions du Québec. 3 des approches visent vraiment à desservir des populations qui sont dans des régions éloignées. Les 3 autres approches visent vraiment à desservir des populations ciblées dans le cadre de nos recherches. Alors, pour ce qui est des approches territoriales qu'on a appelées, on a identifié Acton en Montérégie, les Aides-Chemins dans Chaudière-Appalaches et Bécancour au centre du Québec. Alors que pour les populations, on a identifié les jeunes à Montréal, les personnes aînées dans la capitale nationale et les personnes ayant une déficience intellectuelle ou un trouble du spectre de l'autisme en Mauricie. En ce qui concerne les approches territoriales, l'idée était vraiment d'aller rejoindre les personnes les plus éloignées du système. Donc, c'est souvent à cause de la distance, du manque de transport, du manque de ressources locales ou à cause de la précarité de la population. Donc, dans les 3 cas de figure, nos juristes se sont intégrés au milieu communautaire des régions pour vraiment desservir la population en collaboration avec les ressources locales existantes. Ensuite, en Mauricie, on a décidé de desservir les personnes ayant une déficience intellectuelle, trouble du spectre de l'autisme ou un trouble langagier. Pourquoi? Eh bien, parce que ces personnes peuvent éprouver des enjeux de communication avec les différents des représentants du milieu de la justice et qu'ils peuvent avoir une certaine forme de discrimination. On leur offre donc un accompagnement juridique personnalisé et on le fait en collaboration avec le regroupement des organismes pour personnes handicapées de la Mauricie. À Québec, on dessert les personnes aînées directement à domicile. Alors, c'est pour briser l'isolement et confronter l'obstacle de la difficulté de déplacement de ces personnes qu'on travaille vraiment à aller chez eux, chez elles, pour répondre à leurs enjeux juridiques. Comment? Eh bien, on travaille en collaboration avec les ITMAV, qui sont des intervenants de milieux pour aînés vulnérables, qui ont déjà le mandat d'aller à domicile rencontrer les personnes aînées et qui peuvent, eux, identifier les enjeux juridiques et donc nous référer les personnes. Et finalement, les jeunes à Montréal, on couvre les jeunes de 14 à 25 ans. On s'adresse à la barrière d'accès à la justice qui est la faible conscience juridique et la faible prévention qui est faite auprès de ce groupe d'âge-là. On travaille dans les aires ouvertes qui sont des organismes créés par les CIUS du Québec et qui ont pour mission d'accompagner les jeunes avec des équipes multidisciplinaires. Donc, notre juriste intègre ces équipes de professionnels là, pour pouvoir bien desservir les jeunes dans leur ensemble.
Donc, comme le disait Émilie, on est rendu à la phase d'expérimentation de ces différents projets les chercheurs de l'Institut, eux, s'attardent à l'évaluation de ces différents projets pilotes. Vous avez ici sur la slide présenté le cadre évaluatif du projet qui est vraiment partagé à 2 niveaux. On a une évaluation que vous voyez en bleu un peu plus foncé, je dirais, qui est le niveau micro de l'évaluation qui s'intéresse vraiment à l'efficacité concrète de chacun des services qui sont expérimentés. Est-ce que ça fonctionne pour les personnes qui les utilisent? Est-ce que ça répond aux besoins qu'on avait envisagé répondre via ce service-là? Puis, ce niveau micro intègre un niveau d'évaluation plus transversal, plus macro, je dirais, du projet, qui cherche à comprendre dans quelle mesure ces approches sont pertinentes à plus grande échelle, notamment pour éclairer le déploiement de ce type d'initiative dans le système de justice et mesurer l'impact et la pertinence des approches de proximité en matière de droit et de la justice. On utilise vraiment un cadre qui est celui de la proximité, qui a été mobilisé et développé dans le domaine de l'intervention en matière de santé, de l'intervention sociale. Et donc là, on se pose la question de savoir si ce cadre mobilisé dans le domaine du droit et de la justice est pertinent et amène quelque chose de plus. Vous avez ici les différents outils d'évaluation qui sont utilisés. Donc, on mène je ne les prends pas en détail là, mais il y a des sondages auprès des bénéficiaires qui sont répondus. Les juristes remplissent des fiches monitoring à chaque fois qu'elles desservent, qu'elles exercent finalement une activité dans le cadre du projet Juriste Mobile. On fait également des entretiens qualitatifs avec les juristes dans le but d'avoir vraiment une analyse triangulée afin d'obtenir une compréhension plus complète des conditions et des effets des approches. Cette évaluation se fait par cycle et de manière continue, c'est-à-dire que on met en place le projet, on fait un premier arrêt sur image où là on sort les données issues des différents outils d'évaluation, on regarde qu'est-ce que ça donne, on envoie tout ça sous forme d'un rapport synthèse aux juristes qui réalisent le service, qui prennent connaissance du coup des données d'évaluation, peuvent ajuster le service en fonction de ces données-là. Et une fois que le service est ajusté, on démarre un nouveau cycle d'évaluation. Donc, ça permet vraiment d'adapter le service au fur et à mesure que les données rentrent et donc d'ajuster en fonction de ce que vont nous dire les données. faut savoir aussi que l'ensemble des outils d'évaluation sont basés sur le cadre de la proximité tel qu'il a été développé, encore une fois, en matière d'intervention sociale et de santé, et qui explicite le fait que la proximité n'est pas entendue dans la seule dimension géographique, mais aussi dans d'autres dimensions participatives, expérientielles, cognitives, etc. Ça nous permet au final de mieux comprendre qu'est-ce qui fonctionne, pour qui, dans quelles conditions, et au niveau de la proximité, quelles dimensions de la proximité sont le plus susceptibles d'influencer l'expérience des personnes sur lesquelles il faut travailler, lesquelles fonctionnent en fonction des différents services et donc des différents besoins des populations auprès de qui les services sont expérimentés.
Pour les premiers constats. Donc, c'est encore très tôt, évidemment, pour pouvoir émettre des constats. On est au premier cycle d'évaluation seulement. Par contre, on est quand même en mesure de dire qu'on répond clairement à un besoin. Dans les 6 approches, il y a de la demande et il y a beaucoup de demandes. Ensuite, en ce qui concerne les principaux obstacles d'accès à la justice qui ont été notés dans les documents que les juristes remplissent, on voit apparaître beaucoup le coût financier comme étant un obstacle important, la compréhension du droit et la capacité à faire valoir ses droits. En ce qui concerne les principales difficultés pouvant survenir durant l'échange entre le juriste et le bénéficiaire, on voit encore la compréhension de l'information qui revient et l'état émotionnel qui peut entraver l'échange. Donc, on pense à quelqu'un de très émotif, très stressé, qui ferait en sorte que l'échange, le suivi avec le juriste ne serait pas à son optimal. Ensuite, en ce qui concerne les principaux ajustements, donc devant ces obstacles-là, ces difficultés-là, et avec la démarche que Valentine nous a expliquée, on fait certains ajustements à nos services pour pouvoir les rapprocher le plus possible des besoins de la clientèle. Je vous ai mis quelques exemples d'ajustements qu'on fait. Entre autres, on a introduit la reformulation, donc s'assurer, faire reformuler la personne l'information qu'elle a reçue pour s'assurer qu'elle a compris. La schématisation, donc on va faire beaucoup de visuels pour illustrer les propos juridiques. Des listes de tâches à réaliser qu'on va faire avec eux avant la fin de la rencontre. On va offrir plus de rencontres de suivi et, dans la mesure du possible, on va demander qu'il y ait un accompagnement d'un intervenant ou d'un proche avec la personne. Voilà pour les premiers constats. Voilà pour nous.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's fantastic to hear how directly connected your presentation is to the overarching theme of this conference, that stressing that importance of data collection and its ability to inform early needs assessment, planning, experimentation, and this idea that you will also be using it for your evaluation and refinement going forwards. I also really appreciate that you include this idea of contextualizing the data by outreaching with your partners to validate your findings and offer more context. That's something that we see often in research and data collection, is this misinterpretation, because what we're capturing represents so little, and then with additional context we get a fuller picture. I also appreciate this idea of specific inclusion, and this is something that I noted across your presentations, a specific inclusion of target population. So you gave the example of youth and people with neurodiversities, including people on the autism spectrum. And that was something that you guys had mentioned in the law van as well, is the potential need for enhanced services for people with traumatic brain injuries or people who have experienced trauma in Megan's case. I think that there's a real synergy between these presentations and overlapping but distinct approaches that you're each taking. I'd like to, with some of the time that we have, guide us through some questions. My intention is to have an open discussion amongst us, so I'll address my questions openly, and whoever would like to answer them is welcome to. I speak very quietly, and I'm sitting very far from the mic, so I'm going to adjust myself here. in our planning session, we really discussed some of the themes that we noticed just based on the abstracts. And now, having had the opportunity to benefit from your presentations, I'm hoping that we can expand on those a bit. First is this idea of the importance of first contact and establishing trust. So I heard the term holistic intake. I'm wondering if someone on our panel would be interested in providing a definition for what that actually means. And along with that, if someone, either the same person or someone else, would like to speak to the importance of first impressions and first contact.
I can speak to that, although I think, Megan, you might have more to say because you've got that sort of bigger picture. Did you want to take that question?
I could go next.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So if I'm understanding correctly, like a holistic approach, I would have, like, for example, somebody walks in, I let them know right away, this is a safe space, everything's confidential, unless you mention child safety concerns, harm to someone else or harm to yourself, then I would have a duty to report. And as I'm interviewing the client, whether it's for emergency protection order, peace bond, or maybe a restorative justice client, as I interview them, I'll ask them questions, and like, I know the person, so I'm comfortable asking them any kind of questions, and like asking them about their family, if they're in a relationship, like I'm auntie to them. And as I'm gathering information, if I pinpoint, like, okay, he hasn't been working or she hasn't been working, let's, as a term in your agreement, let's update your resume and deliver it to 5 different workplaces. Or if he had a loss or he's grieving and he needs support with counseling, I'll refer him to, we have a counselor just across the hall and they take walk-ins. Or if they were a victim of a crime, I would refer them to down the hall victim services. And if they're having child custody issues, as I'm gathering for like maybe an emergency protection order, we would put in there that we made a referral to legal aid for a family lawyer, make the phone call with them so I know, so I could add that to our affidavit, include family services and get their input or collaboration, and RCMP to give them a heads up that this application is in progress and you might receive a court order tonight, and just making sure I don't leave anything, like he leaves this office feeling helped and more than just for one thing. And like, shoot, I lost my trail of thought. But basically, all around service. Yeah.
I love that. I appreciate that you give people the opportunity, one, that you set the tone when you meet someone. You give them some parameters that I'm here to listen, I'm here to help, and with the exception of these very specific circumstances, everything between us is confidential. I think that's essential, especially in a lot of our rural communities. Privacy is at a premium, so knowing up front that we're in a safe space and that the person that is listening to us understands that privacy, I think is really key. I'm wondering if anyone else has any examples of anything that you do with clients or people approaching to build trust.
I can speak to that and a little bit about also the holistic intake piece, because it just sort of reminded me of a particular example, but it's a recurring example that happens all the time. So when someone comes up to the van, it's very different than when they contact the legal clinic by phone or by walking in. Normally, if they came in through the clinic doors, you would ask, your name and your phone number and conflict check and their address, and it's a little bit more formalized. When you're at the van, part of building that trust is just, wow, it's, beautiful day outside, right? You're just making small talk about the weather, and it's incremental. Because if you go in really, really hard right away with the formality, you lose them immediately. So we start off with just, conversations. And then in terms of the holistic intake, the story I'm thinking of is an individual who was just riding his bike by and sees us, set up. And so he just passes by and he says, oh, I saw your signs. I don't really have a legal issue, but, I was just curious and thought I'd, come by and say hi and see what you guys are up to. So we start talking a little bit, and he mentions, and you can see that he's holding a bag with some food that looked like maybe not from a grocery store, maybe from a food bank. And in that conversation, he starts mentioning, that he just moved back from the East Coast. He was crashing on a buddy's sofa because he had left his mobile home on his brother-in-law's property. When he came back, the brother-in-law had sold it. So, okay, so we're starting to see a little bit, maybe of a civil litigation issue here, maybe some small claims things. So we start to unpack that, and we say to him, we invite him into that conversation and say, would you like to, talk a little bit more about that? And he's, okay, sure. So now he gets off his bike and he grabs a seat. So he's pulled up. Now we get his name and we sort of start to unpack some of the more formal details. And in that conversation, we start to say, okay, well, what's your source of income? And trying to figure that out. He says, well, I don't have any right now. So well, how old are you? He says, I'm 66. So immediately now we're thinking, well, this individual should be getting at least old age security, GIC. Did he work? Yes. No CPP. So we're starting to see a lot of gaps here. And so we start to say, well, what's going on with the income? He says, well, I'm just not getting it. I said, well, when's the last time you filed your taxes? Well, that's the problem, right? Oh, it's been a couple of years, right? Oh, I also had an ODSP overpayment from, back in the day and haven't dealt with that. I'm worried about clawbacks in the future. Has no phone, no fixed address. So we're right there, we're on the spot, we're in a parking lot, he's on his bike, we're gonna lose him. So in that conversation, we think, okay, we know the tax clinic across the street, get them on the phone, get someone to come over and say, hey, could you get him and get his taxes done this afternoon? Yes. And then we started to set up recurring. We say, well, we'll be back next Friday. Could you come back and give us an update? And that's how we sort of did that holistic intake and that trust building. And then I think we saw him, 6 months later, and he came by and, gave us an update, and he had housing and had his income sorted out. We'd helped him do an appeal for his ODSP overpayment due to financial hardship and have that addressed. And sort of all of those pieces happened over time, but it all started in one discrete, incident, which is somebody riding their bike through a parking lot, on their way home from the food bank. And that was sort of how that evolved.
I love everything about that anecdote so much. It's obviously a big success story, but in the lives of individual peoples, that's a success for our institutions, for our organizations. But in the lives of individual people, that person went from being housing insecure, sleeping on a couch, to all of a sudden having a place to live and having a sense of autonomy and agency back. These have cascading impacts in people's lives and also our communities, so thank you. Along with that, our panelists have a mix of mobile service delivery and some amount of permanence. I'm thinking of Megan, that you guys have, your offices, but that you also do outreach like our friends here. I'm wondering if someone can speak to, obviously your presentations all highlighted just how effective mobile outreach really is. I'm wondering if you can provide any insight, if there's any shortcomings or any areas where this mobile model has any potential drawbacks.
Nous, c'est sûr que dans les enjeux qu'on a dû adresser au départ, il y avait toute la question de la mobilité, évidemment, donc les déplacements et les frais de déplacement, qui est important, et la technologie, s'assurer que les juristes mobiles avaient tout le portable, l'ordinateur, mais aussi une imprimante portable, un réseau sans fil pour pouvoir répondre aux personnes si la personne n'avait pas de réseau. Ça a été des choses qui ont été importantes, et même au niveau de la sécurité des juristes mobiles. Il y a eu un protocole à rédiger puis à envisager, parce que là, ils n'étaient plus dans nos centres, entourés de leurs collègues et dans leur protocole habituel. Il a fallu penser à des protocoles de sécurité propres aux déplacements comme ça chez les gens.
Sorry, I'm waiting for the translation to catch up. Those are fantastic examples of some of the logistical challenges of mobile service delivery. I'm wondering how your agencies or organizations respectively try to plan for or mitigate some of that in your practice.
So at the Law Van, it literally is a traveling office. We have everything that we would have at the normal office within reason, and we're also located where we can go and access one of our trusted intermediaries or service providers if we need to sort of get something else done. So while we have a printer, if we need to photocopy, we can go to the library and all those sort of things. But we also have other resources. So sometimes people need emergency food aid, so we carry gift cards with us so that we can help bridge the gap because, if we're showing up in Georgetown on a Friday, I'm going to be limited in what I can do because we're not around on Saturday. So, it might be a gift card, get you through the weekend. Let's get back together on Monday, through a phone call, or you're going to go to one of our social service agencies down the street and you're going to contact us, and, Kathy, the social worker, is going to connect you. So we try and be equipped, and we've learned over the process of what we need to be equipped so that we can make sure that we're delivering services just like we would and out of the office, and in that high quality way that our clients, regardless of where they access us, deserve.
And in terms of security, we always have to be 2 people. So that's 2 people out of the office, which in a small clinic like ours, we feel that. We feel that absence on those days, but we think the value is worth it.
I appreciate that. That's really helpful context on planning and ensuring that you have kind of everything that you need, including the human capacity to be able to cover these mobile services while also maintaining an office space as well. I'm curious about continuity. So in instances of mobile service delivery, we talked about the importance of relationships, relationship building as part of maintaining trust and confidence in our services. Is there an element of continuity, and how do we establish continuity in these mobile models?
Je peux peut-être y aller. Je pense, puis ça rejoint un petit peu la première round de questions sur l'instauration d'un lien de confiance, voire même d'un lien tout court. Là. Ce qu'on a privilégié aussi dans ces modèles, c'est parce qu'il y a beaucoup de personnes qui viennent pas dans les services juridiques parce ils entretiennent une forme de méfiance envers le système de justice en général, le système public même parfois en général. Puis veut pas, on va rester, Infojustice va rester un organisme juridique. On veut pas changer ça. Fait comment est-ce que on arrive à dépasser ce problème de confiance dans la mesure où on incarne toujours un système qui leur fait peur. Puis l'une des dimensions qu'on a privilégiées, c'est s'associer, collaborer avec des organismes non juridiques dans lesquels les personnes sont comme dans une safe place, se sentent en confiance, se sentent bien pris en charge, puis on va s'associer avec ces différents organismes, bien souvent des organismes communautaires qui visent à desservir les personnes dans des dimensions non juridiques. Et donc, ça permet de bénéficier finalement d'une forme de confiance des personnes envers l'institution dans laquelle elles se trouvent, l'organisme dans lequel elles se trouvent, et indirectement de faire en sorte de renforcer une confiance envers nous-mêmes. Et puis c'est là où l'enjeu de continuité s'inscrit, c'est-à-dire que via ce lien indirect, progressivement, on entre en contact avec ces populations, puis on peut relativiser la méfiance et créer nous-mêmes un lien de confiance derrière. Fait que je pense que dans la continuité, il y a vraiment la continuité de conserver une bonne collaboration avec ces organismes, de continuer à sortir de nos murs et à aller auprès de ces organismes qui sont dans le quotidien des personnes. Puis des fois, c'est des organismes qui sont même pas spécialistes d'un service de santé ou d'un service social, mais qui sont juste des lieux où les personnes ont l'habitude d'aller, puis ont l'habitude de se retrouver. Et donc, rentrer un peu dans ce quotidien-là. Donc, la stabilité à la fois avec les personnes, mais qui, pour moi, passe par la stabilité avec les organisations et les organismes communautaires dans lesquels on agit. Fait que je pense que ça, c'est peut-être une... En tout cas, c'est une dimension sur laquelle on a mis quelques jetons.
I appreciate that additional context of that relationship building isn't limited to relationship building with clients. It's also about the community organizations and the surrounding organizations. I think that's part of what makes even the anecdote that the law van provided successful is that you have a relationship and knowledge of the tax center. And so you're able to call them and say, hey, we have somebody here. Can you come now and provide this service? And I appreciate, too, that you offer this idea that we are all stand-ins for the justice system, the amorphous justice system. And so people's negative interactions with any arm of the justice system affects how they approach us. And also our interactions with them have the ability to shape how they then perceive the justice system itself as a whole. Along with that, I'm hoping we can get into this concept. It's come up all week for everyone, this idea of what it means to be people-centered. And most of our examples here, with the exception of yours, is this idea of these services were designed to be mobile. They were designed to be people-centered. But many of our colleagues in the room have existing legal services that I think they would like to find ways to create more people-centered approaches within. I'm wondering if anyone has any insights into the ability for services, existing institutions, existing services to adapt themselves, or does it really require us to build something unique from the ground up?
He said it's $1 million question.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe I would suggest getting an outreach worker in each sector. That way we can connect with each of your CJOs or outreach worker. Somebody on the ground, somebody not legal, like I'm not a lawyer or anything, something like that, where it would be easier to connect with other service providers in the Justice Department. I think like that way we're all connected somehow, like legal aid and Crown or Public Prosecution of Canada and Department of like territorial or provincial government justice. I think just with the frontline workers, they're able to make sure your services are outreached, or they could collab and then bring whatever that needs to go to your office,
Une chose aussi qui a été dit et redit à de multiples reprises dans le cadre de cet événement, si on veut vraiment être centré sur les personnes sans pour autant créer des nouveaux projets, c'est aussi comprendre l'expérience qu'elles vivent, puis comment est-ce qu'elles vivent ça, puis quelles sont les limites, quels sont les obstacles qu'elles rencontrent dans le cadre du service qu'on va dispenser. Fait que c'est pas forcément créer un nouveau service, mais comprendre comment notre service est actuellement reçu. Puis bon, là, je veux pas rentrer dans les difficultés d'évaluation des différents services, mais en tout cas faire une place, quelle qu'elle soit, au récit et à l'expérience des personnes pour voir comment on peut justement mieux centrer les services sur ces personnes-là. On a souvent des chiffres ou des sondages de très quantitatifs. Est-ce que tu es content? Est-ce que le service a répondu à tes besoins? À quels besoins, etc. Mais peut-être d'aller chercher un peu plus dans le qualitatif et puis dans l'expérientiel des personnes pour voir comment justement on peut se réajuster. Puis c'est ce qu'on essaie de faire aussi dans l'évaluation et continu du projet, c'est de s'ajuster en fonction de ce qui ressort de l'expérience des bénéficiaires des services eux-mêmes.
I appreciate both of those approaches. I think that having accessible outreach and community-based on-ramps for people to existing services, and then that idea of making sure that you understand the actual communities that you're trying to serve and that data collection piece. I want to make sure that we're leaving time for your questions, if you guys have any. But before that, I want to tie it together with the overarching theme of, we got a question ready to go, so never mind.
Here you go. I was kind of sitting here, and then we were all asking questions and stuff, and I just wish I was able to answer a few of them. I work in Fisher River, and I'm very strong advocate in my area. And with Megan, I know we use a lot of holistic approaches, especially with the 4 medicine wheel, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and everything else. You know, we incorporate all these beliefs in our community. And one of the things is, I hope I'm not scaring anybody off here, but anyways, we have to do that connecting with our spirit. And one of them is connecting with our roots. And when we work in very isolated areas, and I'm not very isolated, but we do need programs. And we do multiple things. Like, I can't imagine what Megan's going through. Like, if we don't have healthy relationships, we gotta run these healthy relationships. We gotta host these workshops. We look for our clients, our lawyers ask us how to get a hold of so-and-so. We get a hold of them. We do funding. We do multiple things. People don't know what the things that we do in our community. And we still do what we got to do to help with, we live by experience. I learn from experience as well, because I learn from each and one of our community members. And there's a lot of conflicts, yes, but we still got to do our job, due diligence and everything else. But when we're talking about bringing people together and how do you build that capacity, is what I do in my community is I invite them over. I'll invite legal aid. Come to my Fisher River. Come and do a presentation. We have certain lawyers. We have prosecutors. We have federal managers. We have people coming in to introduce themselves, because there's protocols when you come to our community is just invite them. And one of the things, and we do workshops, we like to be fed. One of our favorite things is Bannock. And that brings people together and everything else. But, when we go to these places, resources, that's how we introduce ourselves, introducing our program and introducing our community. And we're getting an invite where in victim services, we just have Victim Survivors Week a couple weeks ago. I brought them in to do a presentation. And that's how we're able to do and spread our awareness, is just introducing people. Hey, go say. And you're doing good. Thank you so much. And thank you.
Okay, I apologize. We weren't informed of the quick transition, so we would have loved to have more time for your questions, but our colleagues are here for the remainder of the conference, so please feel free to approach them. I think, as they said, partnership and relationship buildings are key to this work, so please make yourselves acquainted. Take care. Thank you.